Something out of the ordinary is underway at a Los Angeles swimming pool. Handmade explosives, a team of scuba divers, a miniature Russian submarine. In this unlikely setting, these filmmakers are creating a climactic sea battle for the underwater thriller Crimson Tide.
Okay, that looks great. Let's blow it up.
Coming up, we'll see how the special effects wizards at DreamQuest Images use specially modified cameras, models, and smoke to create the illusion of an underwater world. We'll also voyage to the bottom of the sea to get an octopus eye view of classic submarine effects. And we'll salute one of the most ambitious deep-sea adventures of all time, James Cameron's The Abyss. It's a journey to the deepest oceans on our planet, where thanks to the effects masters, water is optional. Next on Movie Magic. At DreamQuest Images, a special effects facility in Simi Valley, California, a team of 10 model makers has been hard at work for the past 12 weeks. The result of their labor is 6 meticulously crafted miniature submarines, 3 Russian Akulas, and 3 U.S. Tridents. These scale models will be integral to the Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman undersea adventure, Crimson Tide. Based on the novel by Richard P. Henrik, Crimson Tide is being directed by Tony Scott and produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. This team collaborated on another military adventure, Top Gun, which also relied on innovative special effects.
We want you to experience our movies as magical, but we want you to believe they're real. And in order to experience them as magical, if you're using effects, if you're dealing in the effects area, you have to believe they are totally real. You can never let thought cross your consciousness. That's an effect.
DreamQuest Images has created remarkable visual effects for such films as The Crow, Total Recall, and an earlier undersea thriller, The Abyss.
On Crimson Tide, I think the biggest problem was developing a look. We're dealing with military-type submarines. You know, the Trident submarine and the Akula class attack Soviet submarine. And for the most part, they're completely black and stealthy. And the depth that they're traveling down, really, there is no light. It's very, very dark. So we have to come up with an artistic way of actually, you know, portraying these very large behemoths. The other thing I think that works against us is the size of these ships. When you look at a Trident submarine and realize that it's 562 feet long and 40 feet in diameter, it's almost 2 football fields in length and 4 stories high. And on top of that, there are no real details that would let someone know the size. So to give the illusion of scale is a difficult task.
Very often in miniatures, one of the things that gives away the scale is that everything looks too smooth. It looks like it was carved out of one big block of foam and given a smooth finish. Here, what we did is we actually built up the submarines bulkhead by bulkhead, plank by plank, representing much the same way that the real steel bulkheads and plates are welded on the real submarine. And that left a very slight, almost imperceptible, but still there, ripple effect on the side of the sub that made it look like it was built up out of small parts, made it look much larger.
To film many of the submarine shots, DreamQuest chose the effects technique known as dry for wet. As the phrase implies, the miniature subs are photographed on dry land without a drop of H2O in sight. Shooting dry for wet, effects artists are able to create visuals that would be impossible to achieve in water.
If you were to, say, place a model in the water and really portray it the way that it should be portrayed, you probably would only see a third of it. And you can't tell the story with that. You can't show a torpedo battle in real life because the torpedoes are gone within 70 feet. So in order to make you able to see the battle, you need to be able to push that believability.
That move is perfect.
The dry for wet process is using stage models and smoke-filled rooms to create the illusion of being underwater. And depending on the level of the depth of the water that you want to create, it depends on the amount of smoke you put into the room. The more smoky the room, the murkier it looks on film, the deeper it looks like you're in the ocean.
For this shot, a miniature Trident is mounted on a model mover that sits on a section of track. Nearby, a special film camera is suspended from a ceiling rig called a gantry. Both the camera and model mover are operated by computer, a process called motion control. Effects photography supervisor Scott Beatty programs each move as a synchronized ballet between the model and the camera. The lighting is designed to evoke an impression of the darkest ocean depths. Only the submarine and nearby terrain are illuminated.
Okay, that looks just about right. Bring it down just a little bit.
The single most important element of the dry for wet process is a thick haze of oil-based smoke, which creates the impression of underwater murkiness. Appropriately enough, this smoke is called murk.
We have a system set up here that have laser beams up on the roof that constantly measure the level of the smoke, so that when the guys are sitting shooting the sub motion control, they're constantly monitoring the smoke level so that it is consistent throughout the whole shoot.
Consistency is the key. This film camera is shooting only 4 frames per second, as opposed to the normal 24 frames per second. With such low light levels and so much smoke needed to simulate an underwater environment, extremely long film exposures are required to keep the entire shot in focus. Dry for wet photography is a very time-consuming process. Here, a time-lapse camera shows 2 submarine models moving through a shot that actually took 4 hours to complete. Finally, on screen, the shot is a seamless illusion.
When I watch this picture, I think I'm watching a real submarine from beginning to the end. And I think anybody who goes to see the picture is going to say, hey, wait a second, isn't this real? I mean, didn't these guys get a real submarine and use it? No, we didn't.
I think what ends up happening is, as artists, we're always trying to make every frame absolutely bulletproof, absolutely perfect, and that in reality can't always happen. And when we finally get to the point where we can step back and look at the same work ourselves with a little less bias, we realize that what we've created is an absolutely beautiful, solid imagery that helps tell the story for the director in a very dramatic way.
A submarine stranded at the bottom of the ocean. Since the earliest days of motion pictures, underwater scenes have provided dramatic fuel for Hollywood filmmakers. In 1920, Below the Surface told the harrowing tale of an undersea rescue. The illusion was convincingly accomplished with underwater miniatures, created by effects pioneer Harry Oliver. In 1961, a science fiction adventure called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea helped revitalize the undersea genre. The journey of the USS Seaview, a futuristic nuclear-powered submarine, was produced, written, and directed by Irwin Allen. But the film's visual excitement was created in large part by the special effects of L.B. Abbott. Originally a cameraman, Bill Abbott worked on some 300 films during his 55-year career, winning 4 Oscars for visual effects. As head of the 20th Century Fox Special Effects Camera Department, he oversaw dozens of miniature and optical shots that made this voyage possible.
You are there in a deadly rain of disintegrating iceberg. Not even the soaring imagination of a Jules Verne could have dreamed of such a fantastic adventure.
When Bill started a new project, it was always the same. He was very deep into it, going through all the angles, figuring out all the shots ahead of time, and figuring out how they could make the best product.
For Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, the surface shots of the Seaview were filmed on a man-made lake at the old Fox Ranch north of Los Angeles. Used extensively for such epics as Tora, 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 the lake had a permanent backdrop to display massive painted backgrounds. The lake was also equipped with a specially designed water drop-off that, when placed at the back of a shot, gave the illusion of an endless horizon. For Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, the lake became a vast ocean, and Abbott's 19-foot model submarine looked like the largest seagoing vessel ever. The underwater scenes were shot in a huge tank on the Fox backlot. Abbott's crew built a submersible camera barge with buoyancy tanks that gave it free-floating maneuverability. 2 camera operators shot through convex glass ports that reversed the magnification that normally occurs when filming underwater. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was a successful film and a long-running television series. In 1964, L.B. Abbott won the first of his 4 Emmys for his underwater effects in the TV version.
Bill's enthusiasm was always top. Bill loved what he did and never grew tired of it, ever.
This eternal enthusiasm helped turn dozens of script ideas into on-screen excitement. For L.B. Abbott, each new challenge was surmounted with skill and imagination. Perhaps the most ambitious of all deep-sea adventures is The Abyss. In 1989, director James Cameron and producer Gale Ann Hurd took over a partially built nuclear power facility in South Carolina. Their film crew built the largest underwater set ever constructed, and then filled the tank with 7.5 million gallons of water. A special camera unit, the Sea Wasp, was developed for fluid-moving shots. A custom-designed video system allowed Cameron to view each take while he was working underwater.
It's a degree of sophistication that tends to offset all of the things that are working against you. Because underwater, everything is against you. Communication's against you, safety's against you. There's no such thing as an easy shot underwater.
Adrenaline in a 10cc syringe. Some heating blankets. You got all that?
Cut. That's a cut.
Because of the extreme difficulties, Cameron did not have the time or money to complete all of the underwater shots underwater. For the dry for wet effects work, the filmmakers turned to Dream Quest Images.
On The Abyss, the biggest daunting task was how to shoot models in a dry for wet environment that had to cut directly up against wet for wet. That was the most challenging.
In one scene, divers and submersibles explore the wreckage of the nuclear submarine Montana. First, an 8th scale miniature of the downed sub was constructed on a section of deep-sea terrain. The film camera and a 15-foot section of motion-controlled track were mounted on a rolling platform. This allowed DreamQuest to shoot from a variety of angles and provided the filmmakers with a show-stopping scene.
I think everyone admires The Abyss. It's like the 2001 of underwater films. But I think every time we do a film, we're challenged to come up with something new. And that's what makes visual effects fun. We're not stamping out widgets every day. We're here doing prototype work.
Coming up in the midships hatch.
For this dedicated group of movie makers, research and development was the key to their journey into the abyss. Their accomplishments set the stage for greater deep-sea adventures ahead.
Okay, it's all yours, Lieutenant. All right, A-Team. Let's do it.
The team at DreamQuest Images chose dry for wet techniques for many of the underwater shots in Crimson Tide. But when the script called for a submarine to implode, there was no substitute for real water. At the Los Angeles Swim Stadium, a crew of up to 60 people has spent the past 2.5 months working in the deep end. The result? Less than 2 minutes of finished film. Before shooting could even begin, a temporary steel and wood structure was built over a large section of the pool.
Well, the thing with filming underwater is when you get down past 100 feet, it's dark. The submarines we're filming are around 1,000 feet. Technically, it's black. You can't see anything. And we had a choice. We could either film at night, which would have been grueling in the winter, or enclose the structure. So we can film during the day.
Now the weeks of hard work have led up to a dramatic moment. The destruction of a Russian Akula submarine by an American torpedo.
The illusion we wanted to give was that it explodes under the tail section, and that rips the whole stern apart, and that begins the catastrophic collapse as the pressure hull begins to implode, and as it gets to the engine center, that blows apart. So it really is an interesting choreography of implosion and explosion.
For this climactic scene, 11 separate charges will detonate in less than a quarter of a second.
This is the biggest bomb. It's 24 ounces of black powder and phosphorus mixed with a real hot core. This is going in the nose. This is the last hurrah.
Capturing the massive, exceedingly quick series of blasts on film will require some very special high-speed cameras. 2 Photosonics cameras are set to run at 300 frames per second. When the film is later projected at the normal speed of 24 frames per second, the blast sequence will appear to last more than 12 times its actual duration. The cameras are placed in custom-designed 400-pound aluminum housings nicknamed Maytags by the crew.
We have to put weight in the side of each housing in order to get it down, because once you seal it up, it becomes a big buoyant bubble, and they'll float. And then we have to put about 400 pounds on the side to get it to the bottom.
Each housing contains both a film and video camera. This allows Director of Underwater Photography Jim Dixon to see the shot each camera will hopefully deliver.
The underwater explosions look different than explosions in the air. They have a very curious effect. They kind of expand and then they contract on themselves. Practically no one has seen underwater explosions because obviously you'd be dead because of the shock.
As the hour gets later, the crew meticulously sets up this split-second shot. 2 Hydroflex underwater cameras are also placed at the bottom of the pool. These will provide additional angles of the blast. Even with a crew comprised of experienced divers and ex-Navy SEALs, the process is time-consuming.
I would say the biggest challenge for me and for this whole production is because we're working in water and everything just takes longer. The simple act of moving a light stand takes a command from above and the guy to move it, and then is it okay? Everything just takes forever.
That's big camera. Put your focus at 30 feet, right on the money.
Real Trident submarines are nuclear-powered, but this mini-sub is man-powered. Divers have laid a 60-foot track at the bottom of the pool. The sub runs along that track on a low dolly. Braided cable called music wire runs from the sub to a dolly mounted on its own track topside.
And 3, 2, 1, go!
As this dolly moves, the sub travels exactly the same distance at the same speed. When the dolly hits this micro switch, a computer will trigger the lightning-quick sequence of blasts. Since the explosion is potentially dangerous, the dolly will be pulled by 6 crew members outside the pool structure. But explosions alone will not simulate an authentic underwater destruction. What is needed is an implosion effect as the ruptured submarine collapses. This model has been loaded with 6 large glass jars, which will be pumped down to near vacuums at the last minute. When small detonators break the jars, water will rush in to fill the vacuums, thus imploding the model. The sub's shell is made from 1/32-inch lead, especially used for its soft pliability. Finally, everything is nearly ready. The sub is in place at the bottom of the pool, loaded with vacuum jars and a stockpile of explosives. As the pool area is cleared, the air from the jars is suctioned through an umbilical cord. Now, weeks of hard work have led up to this moment.
Propel speed! 3, 2, 1, pull!
The video playback monitor confirms the shot is a complete success.
All right.
The film is now transferred into a specially designed computer program. digital effects supervisor Dan DeLue fine-tunes film images. He can add, subtract, or manipulate parts of a picture to increase the sense of realism. For the implosion sequence, digital torpedoes are created, complete with realistic-looking wake. Finally, the talent of dozens of individuals comes together for a series of underwater illusions that defy even the closest scrutiny.
That's where DreamQuest shone, because you're not watching effects. You're not aware of it. You, part of the audience, are on that submarine, and that's a real submarine, and those are real torpedoes that are threatening your life. That's what we try to do. We try to take you, we try to transport you into another world. And in order for us to transport you into another world, we have to make it real.
I think when we first read the script or you first look at the storyboards, that's probably when your heart kind of stops, when you look at what you need to do. But I think almost immediately the imagination and the fun of it kind of hits you. And you begin to think, how can we do this better than it's ever been done before? It's basically a lifestyle. It's not just a job. I think you really want to do this stuff. And that's what I like about features, is it's handcrafted. I mean, every frame, and you spend months for just a few seconds, you know, and hopefully those few seconds are the ones that you remember when you leave the theater.